The dusty train screeched to a halt at the small wooden station on the edge of a frontier town. Steam hissed into the air as passengers shuffled off, boots thumping against the platform. Among them was a young bride, her white dress now gray with travel, a veil dampened by tears. She clutched a worn satchel, glancing nervously around. Her groom had promised to meet her, but no one came. Townsfolk looked on with curiosity, some with pity, others with judgment. The bride lowered her head, trembling as loneliness settled heavy on her shoulders. The train whistled again before rolling away, leaving dust and silence. The bride sat on her trunk, crying quietly. She had come from the East, following letters that promised love, marriage, and a future. But promises in the West often broke like dry twigs. Whispers spread among the bystanders. Perhaps the man had lied, or perhaps he had died. Either way, she was alone in a place where women without protectors were often swallowed by hardship. Near the platform, a group of ranch hands stood with their boss, watching. Beside them, a small boy tugged at his father's sleeve. He had wide, innocent eyes, and as he looked at the crying woman, something stirred inside him. He pointed suddenly and said with all the conviction of childhood, "That's my mama." The crowd turned in surprise. The rancher's son had spoken loudly, and the young bride lifted her head, startled. Locking eyes with the boy, the rancher, a broad-shouldered man with sunburned skin and years of dust in his beard, hesitated. His wife had passed years ago, and though he loved his boy fiercely, the loneliness of raising him on a ranch weighed heavy. The boy's words weren't planned, but they carried the kind of truth children often felt before adults dared admit it. The rancher stepped forward, tipping his hat to the bride. "Ma'am," he said softly, "you look like you could use a place to rest." The bride's tears shimmered in the sunlight. She nodded slowly, unsure if she should trust, but with nowhere else to turn, she accepted. The rancher lifted her trunk with ease and helped her into the wagon. The boy beamed, climbing beside her as if she already belonged. She whispered her name, Clara, and told them her groom had never shown. The rancher, whose name was Daniel, kept his voice steady. "Then it's his loss, Clara. Out here, folks need one another." At the ranch, Clara found warmth she hadn't expected. The boy, Thomas, followed her everywhere, showing her the horses, the creek, and the wide fields of grass. Clara's grief began to soften as she laughed with him, her veil forgotten in the wind. Daniel watched quietly, struck by how naturally she fit into their lives. The house, once quiet and lonesome, filled again with the sound of laughter and the warmth of a woman's touch. She mended curtains, cooked meals, and shared stories of the East, weaving herself into their days. But life in the West was never without shadows. Word spread quickly of the abandoned bride taken in by a rancher. Gossip slithered through the saloon, painting Clara as desperate, Daniel as reckless. Some muttered that she was cursed, that no man claimed her at the station for a reason. Others whispered she might have secrets. Daniel ignored them, but Clara heard every word, her heart aching. One night by the fire, she told him she feared she was only a burden. He looked at her firmly. "Clara, you're not a burden. You're the answer to a prayer I never knew how to speak." The ranch tested her too. Clara learned to ride, to gather eggs, and to brave storms that swept across the plains. She discovered strength she didn't know she had. Thomas adored her, calling her Mama without hesitation. At first she corrected him, her heart too fragile to accept. But one evening, after tucking him into bed, he whispered, "I prayed for you. God sent you on that train." Tears filled her eyes as she kissed his forehead, unable to deny the truth in his words. Trouble struck when cattle rustlers began prowling the valley. Daniel rode out with his men, leaving Clara to guard the homestead. One night, shadows crept near, and Clara heard the restless whinny of horses. With Thomas hiding inside, she took up Daniel's rifle, her hands shaking. When the rustlers approached the barn, she fired into the air, her voice steady as she shouted, "This land is watched and it's armed." The men cursed and fled into the night. When Daniel returned, he found her standing tall, rifle in hand. His respect for her deepened into something fiercer. Seasons turned, and Clara's presence wove itself into the fabric of ranch life. She and Daniel grew close, their bond built not on promises written in letters, but on trust forged through hardship. One evening, as the sun sank gold across the fields, Daniel took her hand. "Clara," he said softly, "I know I didn't meet you at that station, but maybe I was meant to meet you here. Thomas was right. You belong with us." Clara's eyes filled, not with sorrow this time, but with joy. Years later, folks in town still remembered the bride who arrived crying at the station. They remembered how no man stepped forward until a little boy's voice rang out, pure and certain. "That's my mama." From that day on, Clara was never alone again. She became not just Thomas's mother, but Daniel's partner and the heart of the ranch. In the Wild West, where promises often blew away like dust, one lost bride found family, love, and a home more real than anything she had dreamed.